Our lesson today is a series of curious factoids from biology and theology. When you think about the fact that we've been talking about the female reproductive cycle, in Christ's time, the menses started at 7 years old, for they were able to become pregnant and start giving birth and have viable births by 8.5 to 9 years old. But only the poor started then. The upper families waited till 10. In each generation now, since World War II, the age which a young woman would bear first child has decreased by 6.7 months. That is the onset of menses. It is now 10 years and 2 months on average. From World War I to World War II, the age increased over the generations by 4 months each generation. Prior to World War I, the onset of menses had been stable for more than 2 centuries, or 14 generations. Throughout the 2nd through 17th century, it raised every single year. It went from 7 years old to 9 years old to 10 years old to 12 years old to 14 years old. The highest it ever was 14 years old. And what affects it most is security and nutrition. But when you add into that shelter, food, and wars, that raises it too. You wouldn't think that a war for their country would affect the child, but the fear and seeing your parent die, your body stops aging suddenly. Funny, men don't think that about young women, but it's true. During these times, 2nd century through 17th century, old age was 30 years old. So when young women stopped having children until they were 14 or 15 years old, they were considered old suddenly before they gave birth. When you think about Henry VIII, everyone knows about Henry VIII. When he took Anne Boleyn as wife, Catherine of Aragon was ancient. She was 31. Anne was 16. You can see why each successive wife that he took was between the ages of 14 and 18. Whether he wedded or beheaded or divorced, each successive wife was a teenager, because the ones he was dumping were old. The next little thing, the Archangel Gabriel appears to Mary, Joseph, and Zechariah. God's greatest defender, angel, Gabriel, brings messages of babies Zechariah doesn't trust the messages because Gabriel carries mighty swords, not messages. He's not the messenger angel. That's Isaiah, if I remember correctly. But don't you be the one to point this out to the angel. Elizabeth is carrying the cousin of the Christ. He shall be named John. He will baptize Israel with water and be eponymously called John the Baptist. John was called the return of Elijah. John was the one to go before, preparing the way. Ironically, John was the first follower, though he went on ahead. He was the first disciple of Christ. John went on ahead to proclaim the good news once Christ began his mission, and then he went on ahead to heaven as the first martyr. Keep watch. Stand guard. There will be no more sleep after the baby is born.